Hello, Froggy here, and today I'll be showing you how to reach the Shattered Throne in a rather unconventional way. We'll be getting there from Last Wish. I feared this route would no longer be possible when Bungie updated Last Wish to block access to patrol spaces. But thanks to some tomfoolery from Aulodian, we managed to figure out a way back. So, you're going to want to head towards Bay of Drowned Wishes, being careful not to set any spawn points. The Lost Sector is blocked by a turnback and a hard barrier, but it turns out if you wish hard enough, the bay can be yours. You only need to make it about halfway up the rock I just passed over. If done correctly, you should spawn back here. Now, we need to hit the load for Font of Starlight, the blind well load. This load is disabled, but for some reason, going near the zone for Bay of Drowned Wishes and then respawning far away allows us to load into Bay from here. I'm still investigating the details, but there will be a follow-up video showing what else I've found. And there we go. I've loaded into Bay of Drowned Wishes. It doesn't matter if you die again in between dying near Bay and hitting that load. But anyways, if I turn right back around, it won't update my default spawn. So if I go back in, and I will die due to the turn back, I'll spawn directly outside of the Last Wish door. Now, if I were to go further into the bay, or if someone were to join, things behave a little bit differently. If you plan to go to Shattered Throne, you're going to want to have the person who got into Bay originally stand still. It's important that they not go further into the bay. They do, however, need to remain there, because we're going to be using our old friend the Wrong Warp. But before we can do that, we need to get to Confluence. It turns out that the Bayside default for Devolian Mists is invalid, so we'll spawn at the fallback point. Heading off to the right here, there's a pocket that's safe from the turnback. Now all we have to do is hit the spine load. And luckily we can do that fairly easily with just an eager edge sword. You want to fly to the right, eager into the turnback, get past the pushback, swing forwards, and one more eager swipe, and if you do that right, it's fast enough to get there. If you can do some sort of skate, that of course would do it too, but I was able to do this on Titan, and not in a particularly tricksy way, so hopefully that won't be too bad. If you pull off a barrier skate going in, it's also very easy. And now for something that's a bit harder. We need to hit this portal and not get wrong warped. Normally, we would just not enable the wrong warp until after we were in position, but unfortunately, here we have no choice. Luckily, Touch of Malice cuts our fall short. Suppose it might be possible for the first person to leave and do the setup again, but that's a little bit inconvenient. Maybe... Ah, there we go. Before we go further, I want to show you what the other zones are like. heading through Harbinger's Seclude is just like normal patrol, until you get here, right about the Ria Silvia load. As you can see, it does not load. And you can see the anomaly in the distance there. You do get a kind of nice view of the kind of cloud layer here, so it's got that going for it, which is nice. Now let's take a look at the Gardens of Asilla. Once again, everything is just as patrol until we get to the load for the Strand. And once again, it does not trigger. And unfortunately, we can't go quite as far here before we hit the box barrier. But yeah, no public spaces seem reachable. Anyways, let's get on with this wrong warping. As difficult as it was to avoid the wrong warp on the way in, it is difficult to hit the wrong warp on the way out. I would recommend dying to avoid having to wait for the long fall. Although if you can die during the fall of the Touch of Malice, it isn't too bad. When you get it, it should look like this. Now we just need to get on top of the giant rock face. It's not too bad to sword fly out. You do want to make sure you head off to the left, because if you go right instead, you're going to end up in the box pull of Spine of Keres, and that would probably mean rejoining and starting from the bay again. If you do your flying well, you can start right above this kind of bottom of this cliff here. This is a convenient spot because there is a shelf a short ways up, and you can set a spawn point there in case you make a mistake somewhere down the line. I certainly did that because I initially did not adjust my kickstart ARM mods, because those got disabled when the one-cost mods went away at the end of last season. And now I've got a nice little safety point to return to. My stasis climbing build right now is just double or triple kickstart and as high discipline as you can get. And triple bomber doesn't hurt either, so that you can use your shield to get your grenade back quicker when it comes up. One layer down, one smaller layer to go. From this point, the route is pretty much identical to the previous video. I'll be giving a link to that in the description because I'm not remaking the video all the way to getting to the end of Shattered Throne, as nothing there has changed. So now we're just going to make our way to about the end of this upper area. At this point, I would recommend generating sword ammo. Simply swap to have low max reserves when you're alive. Then die and swap your sword to having as high reserves as possible. The more ammo you start with, the more you'll generate, so I would do this whenever you hit about 30 ammo. A few iterations later, and I'm at max. Which is good, because we need to sword fly out alongside this intangible mountainside to set our spawn point for the IRB. Previously, we had to use momentum and fighting line to die in midair, but Touch of Malice makes this much easier. Our target is about that red circle and a bit above the texture. I would err on being a little bit higher than you think, because you just need to be within about 70 meters of it. Not sure on the exact distances, because such things are difficult. But hopefully what we did will work. Now we just need to safely drop back into Spine of Keres. I would recommend heading back to about here, and then sword flying over the ground this way. You do not want to accidentally trigger the Devalian Mist load, because if you do that, you most likely will die and have to start the whole thing again. Stasis melee is a good way to catch yourself. And since we haven't killed any enemies in a while, you can probably snag some heavy ammo on the way here. And now, we very much do not want to wrong warp. Although if you do, as long as you die to the true edge, it won't actually matter. Luckily, we did not hit that here. You could have your buddy move back into the regular Last Wish areas at this point. They only need to stay in Bay as a sort of safety net, so that you can just restart easily if you absolutely have to. We'll be using the intangible wall up here to get out of the map. Nice and straightforward. There were other intangible walls, but that one is probably the easiest. We're going to be dying to the load using the Harbinger's Seclude zone over here. You can hit the load by flying out over towards this building. To die to the load, I would recommend going in the sort of crevice on the left here and just bashing yourself against both sides as you walk forwards. And there we go. Just need to get the Autorez now. So at this point, Skyshock has gone back into Devalian.
You are finally here, Brother Slayer.
And at the end of this
All
dialogue,
that strength and there's still nothing
it will trigger the Autorez.
You could be so much more. All you need to do is wish it. Come. I would quite like to meet you.
Perhaps some other time. We're going to Shattered Throne. Just gotta figure out where exactly I ended up. I missed the top of the building, which is where I would normally IRB to, but luckily that doesn't matter. We can just sword fly around the back here and hit the load on the inside. Plus we get a nice view of the Confluence over there. And eventually we should run into the load. It's looking kind of Shattered Throne-y already. Still in Confluence. And any second now. There we go. Welcome to Shattered... Well, almost into Shattered Throne. So we could go back and climb out, but since we have a second person, we can just join on them, which puts us right past that door. And we're in Shattered Throne. If you want to get to the end of the boss arena here, I would recommend my previous video on the topic, as nothing from here on is different. But it is very nice to finally be able to get back here from Last Wish. You can do this from Patrol as well with things like Syncbox. But I've always been more of a fan of the IRB method. Well, let me know if you try this out for yourself and see if you can figure out how to get all the way to the boss room. It is quite a fun route. One thing I didn't notice until Skyshock pointed it out in this cleaner lighting setting is that all of these symbols have different colored glow blinky patterns around them. They're there in the regular dungeon, but I just had never noticed them before. Nice to be able to appreciate them in a less chaotic setting. It's probably worth doing the route just to get to enjoy the Shattered Throne in this strange new lighting environment. Do check it out if you have the time.